Hello and welcome to Turn Towards Love. My guest today is Zena. We explore ancient spiritual practices like the cultural significance of sweat lodges and vision quests. Zena shares insights on the journey of cacao from its origins to modern practices, emphasizing the importance of mindfulness and appreciation in its consumption. We delve deep in its ethical sourcing and spiritual connection it fosters during rituals. The discussion also touches on the impact of cacao on communities and the need for awareness regarding its sourcing and history. We look into the sacred medicine, highlighting its role in fostering emotional release and social connection, and the healing power of ceremonial practices and how best to appreciate this divine heart medicine. We explore connections to ancestral traditions, particularly focusing on the Lakota tribe. Zena shares her personal journey and experiences, emphasizing the co-creative nature of healing and the deep connections to nature and spirituality. We discuss the significance of intention in personal growth, the unique experiences of women in ceremonial spaces, and the importance of community connection. The dialogue emphasizes interconnectedness of all beings and the necessity of following one's joy to foster personal growth and spiritual awareness. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy today's podcast. May you always turn towards love. Turn towards love. Lovely to have you here.
Oh, it's a real honour to be here, Rachel. Thank you for inviting me.
This question for today is, what does love mean to you?
Oh, that's a big question in a way.
I know, it's like the biggest.
The biggest.
Everyone goes, I literally need a while to think about that.
Yeah. What does love mean to me? Well, I think in truth, we are love.
Yeah.
That's the truth, really. And I think everything comes from love. And I think that even all the stuff that we don't feel love, or the difficult stuff we feel in ourselves, I just feel like even the most painful parts can lead us to that. It's kind of it's either where they've not been met. So I just sort of feel we are love. So it's just who we
Yes.
are, and I think it kind of so deeply connected with creation and nature and just that life force. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got because I think, don't they say in Italy they've got like millions of different translations for love, and we've only got like one word, you know what I mean? And it's like they've got because there's so many different types of love as well. There's romantic love, and there's the self-love and all of that. But I think just in a nutshell, we are love.
Yes. Thank you. That's so beautiful. It's so true. It is literally everything in every cell and every being all over. And even through that pain, that difficulty, there's love there to be found, right? Like you were saying, it's so lovely. So when was the last time you turned towards love in a difficult situation, and how did that impact you?
Oh, you're
Yeah.
when did I turn towards love? I think actually it's been this week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like I had something that had happened personally for me, and I was just feeling super vulnerable, like an absolute, just that, like when I see that vulnerability in other people, I love it. Like it makes me feel closer to them. But I don't really like to be
Mm.
witnessed in that level of vulnerability. And yeah, and a friend offered me space to be met, and to hold me in that. And it just felt like in me allowing that, it really was like turning to love. And I think it's like a lot of my journey and a lot of people's journey, and sort of meeting parts within ourselves that maybe we want to hide away from the world, but how do we meet those parts with love? And it's not that because as soon as the mind catches on to that, it's like, all right, that's what I've got to do, kind of thing. And it's kind of, it's not that. It kind of comes from a different place. So I feel like a lot of my path and journey is that, to turn towards love.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So reminds me of like what consciousness is in general. It's that holding that space, having the ability to be able to hold space for yourself or for another, and then just being in that space and holding that space. And that is like what pure, it's pure and it's true and it's real and it's raw and it's accepted just as it is.
Yeah.
So lovely. Thank you.
It's so
It's
welcome.
really nice. Um, So, what I wanted to talk about first with you was how I met you, really. So, it was at the sweat lodge that you held. Like, it's a full day, isn't it? Really. You like the way that you hold the space for people there. And for the because the space is so big and there's you've got the fire, you've got the sweat lodge, you've got the circle, and you've got all these incredible tribal practices, and we get so involved and so deep into the connection of the earth and um what is a sweat lodge, and how did you get to be there and do all this for everyone?
Sort of the first part of your question, I think like my intention always is to hold a safe space. That's
Mm,
always been my intention. If I can hold a safe space so people can go where they need to go within themselves. So I feel like that's kind of where I always start. I also think there's so many different levels going on in that kind of work, sort of in the mundane and the ordinary, and in nature and in the elements and the spirit world kind of thing. So in a way, it's a bit like I might be the one holding that space, and I might be the one facilitating the lodge itself. But it's bigger than me. It's what comes through. So it's kind of like spirit coming through. It's kind of like what I say with healing. It's like people come to me for different issues with the different modalities that I use, but I can't heal anybody.
yeah.
It's kind of that thing of I can maybe do something that will initiate your own energy, and it's up to that person's soul, spirit, body, how it wants to work with that energy. So it kind of sort of feels a bit like that. It's sort of, yeah, there's something a bit above and beyond that kind of comes through. And I do have kind of strong connection with, I guess, particular allies, that yeah, that I kind of call in. And then of course we've got the person that's the fire keeper, and they complete that circle, and that's like a really important part of it as well. And it's like then we've got the land, it's kind of, and we've got the medicine wheel, we've got just all these different elements that help to provide that container, and they're all working together. And then everybody that comes to the sweat lodge are all part of bringing their own medicine of who they are and what they've come with. And so it's kind of like I might be the one, you know holding that in a way,
Mm,
but it's a co-creation. Yeah.
that's lovely. And I really felt that as well. Especially each individual on what they bring and what they share, and how that again ties into what you were saying before about the vulnerability and the openness, and it allows others to be able to enter that space as well. And yeah, the land, the energies, it is so so how could we describe it for people who doesn't know what a sweat lodge is?
Yeah. So basically a sweat lodge is kind of, it's like it's a domed shape, that we build out of kind of trees that are native to the land. So in the UK, it might be willow, it might be hazel, In other places, it could be eucalyptus, it could be bamboo, it could be,
Mm.
there's many different, the trees that they use. But obviously, it's got to be branches that have got that sort of, that can be flexible and bendy.
Yeah.
So we kind of build this dome structure, and then we have like a fire pit in the center. So it's kind of like a hole in the center, or kind of maybe more nearer to the where the person leading the lodge will be sitting. And then there are like blankets that get put over the lodge to dress the lodge. And we then have kind of, I mean, in the Lakota way, they call it the unki. It's like the doorway to the fire. It's like this sort of this grandmother kind of pathway. And we then have the fire. So it's kind of like, we've got the rocks that the fire keepers tending to by, we have a very big fire to heat the rocks. So, yeah. And so when people go in, it's very much like some people go, oh, is it like a sauna? And there are elements to it in the sense of you've got the heat,
Mm.
you've got the sweating, you've got the steam, but it's a very different. It's pitch black. You only kind of see the light from the rocks really, and there's kind of like it's like a ceremony that it's like a purification ceremony, and yeah, so it's really good for people come. It's kind of like cleansing your soul, your spirit, your mind, and the fact that it's dark, it's kind of helping us to go beyond all of our differences. We're all in that space, and it's we do ritual in there, we do prayer in there, we do song in there,
Mm.
and it's kind of like the prayers are between the person and the creator when they're in there. So it's kind of like entering the womb of the earth, or the spirit realm.
Oh, yes.
And some people have very profound shifts and profound healings. And the land and the nature, I've always said this. I feel that there's a real ancient remembering, and they're really happy when we're in that ceremonial way, because I feel like we're honouring every aspect. I think when we're in cities and we're in busyness, and we can be a bit disconnected from nature, but when we're there, it's like it's by connecting to that, all the subtleties. It's also like we're in absolute reverence, of every aspect of it, and we're also connecting to our true nature within ourselves. But it's also that that the sweat lodge is kind of very known for North America and kind of the Canadian tribe, like like the Lakota, and that's some of the influence of because I do go to Lakota sweat lodges. But when you look through history, all of our ancestors used to go to a form of, it might not have been called a sweat lodge. So in Ireland, they've discovered like a lot of these rock kind of mounds, and they've put it down from like 1600s to 1800s that people would be going into these kind of places. So for the heat, and there's like in one part of Ireland, there's like they found 100 of these mounds that are like kind of these sort of beehive shaped kind of rock formations were like all over the land,
Uh-huh.
and they're all over Ireland. And it's kind of like, yeah, like over 2,000 years old. There is a memory on our lands, and it might have been slightly different in how they connected and what actually went on in those lodges. But I think it's reclaiming something also from our ancestry, and in the UK, and in the lands, in the
Yes.
way, and the Druid way, and yeah. So, and then you've got like temescals, which are kind of more sort of like Mexican, sort of more Southern American, and they can be sort of more, again, a bit more solid structure. So it could be like a wood structure or a brick kind of structure, where they would also perform kind of the like sweat lodges. And then, like, I mean, I think of in Morocco, it's like a bit different, but you've got like the hammams, there's
Yeah.
kind of this Scandinavia, they'll have their whole thing with sort of, saunas and, and going out into the snow and, and it's kind of, so there's all these kind of different ways. But it's interesting that I have had people that they've had, and I think it's natural if you've never been to something like this before and to go, wow, it's going to be pitch black. And, there can be a bit of fear around that. Or people that have said that they really struggle in saunas and they're not quite sure. But when they've come to my sweat lodge, they were absolutely blown away by it. And, it's a very different experience to just going into a going into a sauna.
Oh
You know what
yeah.
I mean? And yeah, and you've
It's totally different.
experienced that. Yeah. And I think it's sort of like also the steam, we always say the breath coming out of the rock,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
my
it's
gosh.
like it's sort of that's yeah, like really that we're sweating in. So we're kind of sweating in this ancient knowing that comes from the
Mm.
rocks.
Like the purity is coming out. He's releasing all of the impurity, isn't it? It's like really,
Yeah.
bringing that out, and at the same time connecting to prayer, connecting and to the nature and to each other, and really having that opening. It's really opening in so many ways. I found. But what you were saying before reminded me of a cairn.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those,
Yeah.
was it like that, do you think? Is that what it is? Or is
Explain
it
what you mean by
different?
a cairn. Like, do you mean like a
So they have, especially in Scotland, I know the one in the Clava cairns in Inverness, they have
okay?
the all the rocks that build up into like a dome, and then you
Yeah.
go in, and then there's like just in a circle, but you have the access point like going in, and then it's shut off at the other side, and then it's a
Yeah.
dome, or it can be an open one as well. I don't know whether it was
Yeah.
previously all covered, but and they have the stone circles there at the same time, and so I was just wondering if that was that, because that
Maybe.
maybe
Maybe, if it's not like kind of a burial, type
that's
thing. So we've got burial mounds as well,
yeah,
but there's definitely a possibility of that.
wow, because
Yeah, there are some archaeologists in this part of. I was reading this article that a friend had shared. That they've got this project. Is it Ledwith? It's called, or it's kind of like this part of the county of Ireland, and so they're doing all this archaeological like study into that. Um, yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me. It
yeah.
sounds very like it could be.
So
It's interesting.
interesting. Honestly,
Mm,
especially the way sacred sites link up across the world. Um,
yeah.
and there's something huge there to be found. But thank you for sharing that. Um, I'd love if you could explain a bit more about who the Lakota tribe are,
Mhm.
and where they came from, and yeah, your relationship with that.
Yeah. So I guess if I sort of say, I mean, I've been attending sweat lodges for 13 years in
Wow.
total. And it was in a lodge, like, for quite a good time after that I got this really clear vision about me running women's sweat lodges. And at that point, I was like, is that even possible? Could I even, do that? Like, I wasn't following a particular tradition at that point. And then I think it was literally a couple of years later, I found this training of this woman who was offering it. And she, so I went to do this sweat lodge training, and it kind of literally went back to back. I got invited to go to a Lakota sweat lodge that was running on the land, and they've been running it for like 20 plus years. And so I just remember completing my training, like literally coming out of one sweat lodge door, like I'd just done my whatever I needed to do, but feeling very uncomfortable through the whole. training really. And as soon as I got to the land where they were going to be running the lodges, and I met the medicine man, I didn't feel that unease or that. I almost felt a little bit inept, and I just felt like my soul had come home. That's kind of just how it unfolded. And he just shared some really profound things with me that I hadn't even mentioned, but that I'd been sort of struggling with for myself. And I just felt it was just very real and very grounded. And I found it really humbling. So it was sort of this thing of, wow, there's a lot more to this. And I'm, it wasn't kind of, I think in the West we can have this thing, right, I'm going to do this training and now I'm going to go and offer this thing. And I think that we just have that. And it just became really clear to me that, because he was a bit like, that they've got all this tradition. Here I am, I've just come and done this training for sweat lodges, and it was a bit like, who are you? And he just sort of said to me, you know what what's going on, why have you just done that, that this training? And I just said, look, I said, all I know is I'm following my heart. I said, that's it, that's all I know. And he just got that, you know what I mean? It wasn't, because I think there's been, like there's a lot in this sort of colonialism, and there's a lot, it's a big topic, but just where, Westerners, we just go and take traditions and, and take a lot from, and then like try to just make it our own. And rather than like, because I think we've lost a lot of that along the way. And I think, it's sort of where we're going through a journey of reclaiming that.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Lakota kind of, they're kind of like indigenous to what we know as America, or North America, and that they would call that Turtle Island. And the path that I've, that where I go for the lodges, they follow the lineage of Archie Fire Lame Deer, and he's not alive anymore. I think I can't remember. I did write it down when he actually passed away, but he's very, very well known he's, like a very well known medicine man. And so it's his nephew that runs the lodges. And I've also been to one of his son's lodges. His son is still alive, and went to one of his lodges as well.
Wow.
I do feel Archie really strongly. I
Oh,
just do. I just feel that connection, and I really like, and I'm also really mindful that I'm not saying that I'm running a Lakota sweat lodge. I'm sort of, I think that's really important, at this time, like, because it's kind of, I connect with the songs, and I offer that in the lodges, and we offer our prayers, but I follow the Celtic medicine wheel of Erlands, because I feel like that's just in alignment for where we are here.
right.
And I kind of follow, some of the grandmother teachings that I learned through my training. And and I also want to honor Joseph Rael, who is from the beautiful, his name translates, it's from Tiwa, kind of Mexico, but it translates as the beautiful painted arrow. And
Wow.
that's a tradition that John Wilson, he's kind of really brought that here. And he was the one that invited me to run women's sweat lodges at the time. So it was kind of probably
Wow.
4 years after my lodge training that I ran my first lodge, first women's lodge.
Gosh.
And so I kind of want to honour that. And I sort of, I did my sun moon dance, which is it's a bit different. So Joseph Rael is on the red path, but it's not the same as the Lakota. So I've done my first of the sun moon dances, So I guess that's something else to kind of say, is that the sweat lodges, can be used as a whole thing in its entirety, and it can also be used as a before going to, to like a particular ritual or ceremony. So whether that's a vision quest or, the sun. I mean, we've gone to the sun moon dance, but the Lakota, they have the sun dance, which is,
Ah,
it's different. It's very different. But interestingly, both Archie and Joseph were born at the same year. So they were both born in 1935. They
wow.
both lost their mother when they were really young. So it's interesting. So I think Joseph was 7 when he lost his mother, and
Ah,
Archie
mhm,
Firelame was 5,
mm,
and it's kind of that when Archie lost his mom, he didn't understand at that time what was happening. It was just these men came to take his mum away. Like that's how he saw it, and she got put into
mm,
this box, and he wanted his mom. He basically ran back to the cemetery, and apparently it was very far from where they were, and everyone was looking for him, and they finally found him at the cemetery, and he'd been there for 4 days and 4 nights, and he nearly died. And it's like so it was almost like he did his first vision quest, like
yeah,
at 5 years
so
old,
young.
you know. But there's this whole, like, history that's gone on the lands in, in America, like, and like I remember growing up with cowboy and Indian films, and it always made out that the Indians were the baddies and the cowboys were the goodies, and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And now you like to, learning all the history of actually what has gone on there, and you know, yeah, it's been, yeah, and it's kind of that, yeah, it's been strong, like to really acknowledge that. And I guess I just have that real deep appreciation that Archie Fire Lame Deer still came, he came over to Europe, and he offered his teachings and his ceremonies at that time. And it's not like, I think we can fantasize about. And the medicine man used to say that to me, and it's like, yeah, it's like a real reality thing. We can kind of fantasize about their ways. But there's been a lot of, like, I mean, Archie was, you put into like a Catholic school, you know what I mean? And he was like, was in the veteran war, and,
Gosh.
was an alcoholic for a time, and you know what I mean? And it's kind of this thing of all that sort of trauma, really. And like, it's when his dad passed away, it was that moment that, his dad kind of passed on all of his medicine, like his, to Archie. And he said he felt, that something something died in Archie at the same time as something brand new began. And that's, so it's almost like, I think, he was always kind of destined to be a medicine person, a medicine man. Yeah, but it's kind of and it's almost like, when you look back, I think he was like a Hollywood stuntman, and he was sort of, you know, yeah, just, all these all these different roles that he played. It was almost like that thing of living life to the full, so
Mm.
that he could then be, a medicine man to really meet those places. So,
Oh, wow.
he would offer he managed to offer the lodges to all the indigenous, all the Lakota family that were in, all the people that were in prison, like, because they were like drunk and disorderly, through trauma and stuff, and to remind his people where they came from. And and it became, started off at one, it became really popular. And so, it's there's so much
Yeah.
to it all. And I'm just sort of aware, yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot to it, and I guess that it's like also with the songs, they're really sacred, the songs, and yeah, really mindful about where to sing those songs. It's kind of that thing, and because I'm sort of learning them, and those songs can be a big part in the lodge. And I'm sure you would know that, and I know that I brought in other songs, and I invite people in the space if they've got songs they want to sing, but can really help to go through the lodge when it gets really really hot. And but the songs are also used for their traditions. So they have something called a hamplatia, which I've sort of been part of, like of a support of a friend who is from the UK, who was doing his first vision quest, and yeah, and hamplatia means a cry for a vision. So
What is a vision quest for anybody that is unsure on that?
so a vision quest is kind of like going into nature really, and really being with the elements, being away from everything else. And there may be different traditions that will do it a bit differently, but traditionally it's done for like 4 days and 4 nights, kind of being in the wilderness, or in and no food and no water.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
kind of like quite a strong dry fasting, and it's a yeah, it's kind of like a call for a vision. So it could be if somebody's kind of maybe a bit of a crisis in their life, and they're calling for that, or they're just feeling really called, but it's got to come from the person. You know what I mean? It's sort of yeah, because it's quite a big thing to undertake.
Right.
And then yeah, we'd be in the like sweat lodge below, wherever they are, like that, and we'll be sort of, yeah, singing and praying for the people that are on the mountains, or wherever it would be. Yeah, so it's kind of like a call for vision. They all It's not like that everybody would necessarily get one, but if they're meant to,
Uh, mhm.
they would.
And is it a group or is it on your own?
Again, that depends on
That
where
depends.
people would do that, but I traditionally it is on your own. And kind of going back to sort of the sun moon dance
Yeah.
that I did, and it's yeah, because that's, in a way, it's kind of, because you're in an arbor, and you've got this big drum, and you've got all the drummers around there, so there's this sort of holding of that, but you're dancing to the tree and back, and that's also over 4 days and 4 nights, and you're dry fasting, so there's no food and no water for that as well. Powerful. It's very very powerful. And yeah, and again, people have different reasons why they're called to do that. It's, I mean, I don't know about you, but I grew up being told that if you didn't drink water, if you had no water for 3 days, you'd be dead, like, and all that kind of stuff. But I think when things are done in a really safe way, and it's done in a ceremony, and it's yeah, it's very different. It's
Absolutely.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
even when you go back to like the yogis, you know, again, just I guess any ancient tradition, like they don't eat or drink, they just spend like all the time in like caves, and so I look back to that for my health, for my advice,
Mhm.
for my medicine, and I just like. And I think, well, we're told all of these things, and we kind of just do it because we've been told. Whereas, like, if we take our own initiative to do the research and really go back, texts and sacred texts out there really help to understand the body and the mind. And the science that's coming up now is proving these very things. Like, it's so good to do, like, even if it to do fasting in general. I like the intermittent fasting. Like I feel more energy, more alive, more focused. And when I eat too much, I'm like sluggish and just like, oh, and my body doesn't feel good. So I think it's really good to experiment for yourself what feels good for you. But it's so nice to bring that awareness to the table for people to let go of that fear of what happens if I don't have food, what happens if I don't have that, and understanding the branches of everything that you've just explained that we can go to for help, for medicine, for healing, for understanding more of who we are, for what even is our vision, because a lot of people would be just like, what is that? What does that mean? How can I get that? And life changing must be.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's sort of, I guess it's always about what the intention is behind any of it. You know what I mean? And it's that, it's kind of this thing of being called for a vision that's not necessarily everybody's thing of they go around going, yeah, I'm calling for that. I think it's when it comes to people, and it's like if they're ready. Like I remember speaking with the medicine man, and he'd said, um I was talking to him about that because that was the first thing I said to him. It was like I hadn't even. I was like, I want to do the vision quest, and they were like, we need to get to know you. You know what I mean? So I just arrived, and it was like all like but it was so interesting, when he just kind of said like, you come and tell me when you're ready. And it just put all the responsibility onto me, and it really helped. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be nobody like gonna rescue me. You know what I mean? Like if anything, you know what I mean. It's to just be in that wilderness, and just to be in that. And I'm feeling like I'm getting much more ready. I really am. But it's that thing of it's that humbleness. You know what I mean? Of like, is it really calling, and what is the drive behind that? Is it the ego, or is it like really coming from from my heart? And yeah, and there's that, like, I mean, the way they do it in the Lakota is like a whole year of preparation. There's a lot of things to do. It's not just the actual 4 days. It's a really huge commitment. And I think with any of these things, and with the beautiful painted out, it's kind of the sort of same thing. And often it's like, is it going to be like a 4 year commitment of like, or doing it for 4 times, or there's different numbers for different rituals. And yeah, and I think it's also important to say that like in the Lakota way, it was traditionally that it was for the men, the sweat lodges, because women, it was like women were sinners. We have a bleed every month. If you're at that stage of your life, like not the menopause, but it's kind of, so we have a monthly purification. So yeah, in their tradition, it's very much that if a woman's on her bleed, she wouldn't be it's like she's not able to go into the sweat lodge, but she would have what's called a moon lodge, which would maybe just have one or two rocks in it. It's a very gentle thing because she's already going through a purification. But it's also because she's sin is so powerful that she could break the energy of the medicine man, or holding that space. So yeah, so it's really interesting. Like, it's and I kind of really called that in, and I did get to have that experience. And it's because a lot of the women don't want to be on their bleed, because you want to be part of the main
Yeah.
sweat lodge and all the songs. But it's still equally powerful in a very different way. And yeah, and I mean, and for me personally, I run women's lodges, and I let women decide on that. Like, as I'm, you know, like, yeah, if women feel that they're able, I've had women that have been on their bleed in the lodge, and it's just that, for them to take it a lot more gently, and that they don't have to stay for all of the whole thing. So yeah, because I'm kind of running a women's space and I'm a woman as well. I just feel like, you know,
Yeah.
that's what I do. But yeah, I think it's important to say that because yeah, it brought up a lot for me, like not being allowed to be in the space because I was on my bleed. It was really, it was quite an experience, really. And it did bring up a lot.
I can
But
imagine, yeah.
yeah, but kind of like afterwards, like right at the end, I was like thanked for the work that I'd done. Like, and
Wow.
it was like I was given the water and the buffalo horn to offer to every single person in that community. And
Oh,
that's when I got it, because it's just that I think when we're on our bleed as women, there's so much that happens in our psyche, so much that happens in the inner planes. And, with the yin, yin and yang, and, that it's the yin's very inward and it doesn't necessarily get seen, is it? It's almost like, I mean, I grew up with like adverts for like Tampax and women
I know.
wearing blue, electric leotards and going roller skating. Like, yeah, I'm sure
Really?
it's a woman on her bleed. She really wants to do that when she's on her bleed, And it's this thing like, but it's a real pulling in, isn't it? And it's like, I think that, yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but I just sort of wondering, because I'm going through like the whole the menopause and like how different it would be if we had our like a proper red tent every single month. And I did hear like apparently the councils, they used to give women a few days off,
Yeah.
when they were working, when they were on their bleed. And, so it was kind of interesting to be in a community where the bleed was kind of honored and really, everyone gets to know about it. Like, because if you're not in the sweat lodge, there's a reason for that. But yeah, so, and I guess it's kind of this thing as well, how we honor the cycles in nature. And I feel like that the sweat lodge is very connects us to the cycles, the rhythms of nature, the spirit
Oh,
of nature, but
fully.
also our own inner rhythms and our own, what's going on for us. And
I
I
think,
do feel like the energy in when women come together for a sweat lodge is, yeah. And I, sometimes have, male fire keepers. There's
yeah.
John, there's Ryan, they're amazing guys and, amazing fire keepers. And yeah, and they've, John said that to me as well. It's just a difference. It's nothing like, bad or wrong. It's just different. And for me, I just love it, like getting women together and to be that close on the land together and to share from the heart, like what their challenges are at this time, and to just feel really heard and supported and to offer these strong prayers. And it's like, not just, it's for other people, it's for family, it's for the world, and for ourselves. It kind of just feels like it's such a powerful medicine, and it's so needed now
It's
more
so
than ever for
needed.
like all the stuff that is going on in the world. And
Exactly.
it's that thing, and about what we do in one reality. And this is coming from Joseph Rael now, but he'll say that's like you've got the 3D reality, and then you step in, you do into a like a ceremony. It's like you're now kind of in the safe spirit world kind of thing. And I kind of want to say that spirit means breath also. So, you know what I mean? If people feel a bit fearful of that word, but it's this, yeah. And then we come back into the mundane, and it's kind of this, and that what we're doing in that ceremonial space is rippling out further than our minds could ever perceive. We couldn't control that with our mind.
Mm-mm.
And I guess it's a bit like, if people talk about being in their hearts and feeding that love energy, and creating, doing meditation, and just by simply being in that offers something, to, wherever they go, like,
Yes.
and it's energy, right? And I just think that, yeah. And then there's that kind of like, what is that saying about enlightenment? Like, before enlightenment, chop wood and
Carry
carry
water.
water. After it, like, went chop wood and carry water. It's like, we've got this body, we've got this, like, we've got to be practical, it's
Yeah.
not all escapism into love and light, it's not, it's not an easy path, but it's how do we bridge like the opposites, the differences there. And that can even be also in, our conditioning and our personalities and all of that. And I feel like ceremony can be those spaces and like connecting us all to what we have also in common. We're all unique, but then it's connecting us to, the love of song or the love of dance or, the to be witnessed, to be seen, to be acknowledged.
Oh,
These are all human needs, right? And
mm,
often when we're out there, it's like everybody just wants to talk, um, and but not really getting heard. And I think that in sort of ceremonial spaces, it just gives that space for everybody to take up their space and be seen and acknowledged, and then to kind of go, oh wow, it's not just me going through this struggle, kind of it just. So yeah, so it's that, isn't it? I think as a human being, it's that bringing people together, that connection and that
it's,
community. And
yes. And the way you've, wow. I mean, I could just want to talk about so many, everything you were talking, your medicine and everything that you're saying, and feel enriched. And I feel, you know, heard and seen and felt just by the words that, just by the acknowledgement of what that's what people need. Because we can feel so immersed in our own world and in, oh yeah, well, we have an expectation almost of what's going to happen that day, what's going to happen with that person, what's going to happen, and nothing changes because we don't allow that change, and we think that's okay and that's normal. And then we're like, oh, we don't, sometimes so out of touch, disassociated with our body and with our hearts and what our hearts need, because we don't speak to it. We don't speak to our body and connect to it because we're so busy and so on the go and so involved in other people, in the drama, in the life of everyone and everything else. It's like, well, who am I and what is my body, and do I even know that? You know, the moon cycle is literally connected to other women, to the moon, to the waters. And what do the waters mean, and how does that represent us? And these deeper questions can be answered and have been answered, and it's there for us. And through that, we get that unbelievable connection with other people, because I feel like we can be so scared. I know for me personally, I was scared of white women and scared of men in different ways, and um was really struggled to connect. But through these ceremonies, through these heart openings, and the vulnerability, it like you were saying at the beginning, it just really helps to be able to gain relationships that are based on the fundamental like truths of life, like just love, and like not for like all the people who they expect you to be, and things. And everything that you were saying is just so beautiful. So thank you for explaining all of that. And yeah, what a lovely journey you've been on as well, and what you must have witnessed, and the growth of others and the healing of others, and in turn the healing of yourself. It just must be such a beautiful thing.
yeah, I mean, I am, grateful. I'm deeply honoured, like I really am. And obviously, it's not like I think our minds likes to have that beginning, middle, and ending of a story, and it's not like, right, I'm healed now, and and this is it. It's kind of like an ever evolving
Oh
journey, and
yeah.
there's always sort of something to look at and embrace within myself, and you know, yeah. So, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's not always easy, and it's the journey, I think, and yeah, doing this work. But I've really felt that with a lot of what I've done. I've been invited to do it. It's not necessarily been on my, you know, But it's not like, I mean, whenever somebody used to go, what's your 10-year plan? Like,
Oh, yeah.
just been, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow yet. It's, it doesn't work with my brain, but I think it's that thing, if I did have a 10-year plan, there's no way I would have said, like, I'd be doing Cambo and cacao ceremonies and sweat
This.
lodges. Each one of those things have come through the medicine, really.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's come through that. It's really come through that. And it's come through
Yeah.
then what I then got invited to do. Um,
So,
and so it's a bit like I'm just following my
yeah.
own journey and like, yeah,
Where you're
you know.
being guided to, you're following your heart because you're in touch with your heart. So you know your intuition guides you and leads you. And it's in that comes the wow, I listened and I received, and it's greater than you could ever possibly think or plan. I think sometimes when we plan things, we're putting a cap and a limitation on the possibility of what could actually be because we think we need to be in control of everything. But when we connect and it comes through us, it's better than we could ever possibly imagine. So valuable. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was that you deliver cacao ceremonies. And I was wanting, in case my audience didn't know what a cacao ceremony was, what cacao is, and what's the medicine behind
Yeah. Wow.
it.
I mean, I want to start off by saying again, it wasn't in my plan. Like originally, I was gifted a block of cacao from a very dear friend of mine who also runs offers, sells cacao and offers a lot. And this was back in, I think it was 2016. And he said to me, do you want to start selling it? And the only reason I kind of wanted to start selling it was because I kept mithering him because I was like, my intention was, right, I'm going to get this cacao and I'm just going to see how to make my own chocolates. That was my only sort of thing. But then I'd start like eating it or making drinks with it. And then it's like, it sort of, that came later, like making the chocolates. It just felt so good, like taking it. It was such a beautiful heart medicine. And so every time I say, have you got the next shipment coming yet? And he'd just be like, in the end, I think he just was like, do you want to come and like sell it with me? And I thought, well, okay then. So that's how I kind of started really. Like I
Wow.
wasn't running ceremonies at that point. So I was just kind of selling cacao. That was how it was. And ceremonial cacao is like, it's a plant medicine, if you like. It's kind of like chocolate, but in its purest form. So we have cocoa, and or but it's very different because of the process that takes place. So ceremonial cacao has the full kind of cacao butter, and the cacao itself, and it kind of goes through this like fermentation process that kind of really helps to bring out the potency of it. So it's definitely related with chocolate, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, but it's like, it's yeah, it's the absolute heart medicine. So whenever you used to see research of if
Yeah.
you feel like you want a bit of love, have a piece of chocolate.
Chocolate.
That actually came from the ceremonial cacao. Like that was what was actually
Wow.
used. But it's very different to cocoa, and it's very different to cacao. Like in the sense of if it's not ceremonial cacao in the way it's sort of been processed. So it's a real beautiful medicine to really help get you into your heart. So I was just kind of like having that, like just building a relationship with it. And it kind of, I don't know, one thing led to another. I felt like I got really called to run ceremony. And I did some training with an amazing woman who, yeah, I was talking with my friend recently about this, just like was quite a pioneer in this. And it kind of feels a bit like sometimes the pioneers of something never get the
Oh,
credit, if you know what I mean. It's the
yeah.
people that speak the loudest that kind of get the
Yeah.
acknowledgement. So it's just really deeply appreciative, and that's kind of how it began, really. And so for me, it was like a place where now all the stuff I'd done over my life that all seemed like quite different things, it was a space where it all kind of came together, and it just kind of made sense to me. Um, and so yeah, so I offer that, but what's really, I mean, and people get a lot from coming, but what's interesting is, from where it's from, where I get it from, I get it, from the Ashaninka family in Peru.
Wow.
They don't do like ceremony in this way, and and it's like they'll eat the fruit of the cacao, and they might they might use it if just as a drink, or they but there is a lot of, in sort of Mesoamerican times, there is a lot of history that I could go on about. It's a big story, but just sort of about how, I guess, it came onto our lands. And originally, there's a kind of a legendary story about how it was the women that were really the ones that would be the preparing of this medicine, and they did use it in different rituals, and I think they even used it in sort of mass, and and kind of all these different things. And Montezuma, who's kind of known as this, you might have heard of Montezuma chocolate. I think there's a name after it, but
I don't
yeah,
know.
he had a harem of women, and so he was like, said he'd drink 50 cups of cacao because it can be also a bit of an
Gosh.
aphrodisiac. But nobody would survive. I don't think anyone would. That's
No,
just
yeah.
ridiculously strong. Like, yeah. So anyway, but there's this whole kind of history of sort of how it kind of then, like, women and children got banned from having it at a certain point, and how that got reclaimed back. And when you have the ceremonial cacao, it does really wake you up to what I would call your inner Shakti. It really,
Uh-huh.
I really call it a her personally. Like, I
Mhm.
really relate with it in that way,
Mm.
and she just really connects you to your truth, and really really helps to kind of open your heart. And yeah, and so sometimes emotions can kind of get released with that opening also. And yeah, so it's kind of not something that, I always say, she doesn't do it for you, but she might lead you to the gate towards something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's such a beautiful heart medicine, and it's kind of exploded now in the West. And I
It
think that,
has.
like, on the one hand, it's kind of great. Like, there's this quote about, that when we get out of balance, when humanity gets out of balance, the cacao, Deva will come and
Mhm.
restore the harmony, back to nature. And I think that cacao helps to connect us to our true nature, and helps to connect us to, like, you know, letting go of any sort of, if we have these inherent beliefs that we're broken in some way, it's kind of like, that isn't true. And as much as sort of that, when we're in love, like how the brain responds, it's the same chemical that gets kind of activated when we have the cacao. So it can really connect us to that sort of feeling of love in a
Yeah.
real way.
The endorphin, is it?
It's kind of
Kind
like,
of.
it
There's
begins with
some.
P. I never, it's for Lendelelen. It's like a really
Oh,
long,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, I'm with
but it
you.
has got theobromine, which comes from
Right.
the word theobroma, which kind of, is translated as foods of the gods. And
Yes.
it's kind of seen as a sister of caffeine. But whereas caffeine would, like, charge up your nervous system, the theobromine, like, charges up your cardiovascular system, and it brings more oxygenated blood to all the vital organs of the heart and the brain. And it also has, like, anandamide, which is like the bliss molecule. So it's the only food source on the planet that has anandamide in it. And
Wow.
yeah, Yeah, and
Oh, the
so
bliss
yeah,
module.
yeah. So it's kind of got all the feel good stuff in there. But
Yeah.
saying that, it's also really great to work with. You know, I don't really like that word shadow, to work with our shadows. Like, I feel like it brings a judgment, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's just parts of the self that we either reject, have been rejected, or like we've hidden away, or we've put in exile. I feel like it just really helps us to work with that. So, for everybody, it depends on what's going on with them, but it's a really beautiful way to like bring people together, and for people to connect. I think there's so much social anxiety that that we have in the West, and all this kind of I mean, I don't really drink. I don't go out drinking anymore. I might have the odd,
No,
like, drink if it's a special occasion, but I just, it's not really in
me
my
neither.
in
Mm.
my world really. But
Mhm.
when you sort of see people working hard all week and then they have a big blowout at the
Yeah.
weekend, and it's sort of that their association of letting their hair down and like just having some fun, and like, fair enough, there's nothing wrong with that. But I guess it's sort of this thing of like, I just, curious about, wow, the social anxiety, like how much people need drink to be that social, to
To
go
hear that.
dancing, isn't it? And
Mm.
I think
Mm.
like, I mean, years ago I was part of running the Cauldron, which was a conscious clubbing event, and this was like before. Now we've got all these conscious dancing
So cool.
events, and it was me and this, yeah, Guy Barrington, he's called, and so we ran a
Oh,
few of those in Manchester. You might know
uh-huh.
him. He does kind of
I know
dance,
that name.
bio
Yeah.
dancer, and dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that was, yeah. And so, and even I remember at that time, I mean, I think the world's changing a lot now, but there'd be people commenting, "What do you mean there's no alcohol when you go there?" It was really like that, and
Yeah.
and it was that thing of like, well, just come, like, just
Ah,
if you're feeling anxious, that's part of your dance. Allow that to be part of the dance, and just how you can connect so much more when you just be with how you really are, like without needing to, do something. And yeah, so anyway, back to cacao. I'm going off on a tangent again, but yeah, so with the ceremonial work that I do, again, it's just a place to hold that really safe space for people. And yeah, we'll do different things. I'll, might guide them into like a shamanic drum journey. It depends on what the theme is. Like, I know that yeah, by the time this is aired, this might be over, but like, yeah, got the uh, the one
the
for Sour
one.
coming up.
I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
yeah, you're coming for that. So, yeah, and I love this time of year. It's such a powerful time, and just that when the veils are thinner, like it sort of really connects us to our ancestors, and I think it's something that that root of that level of connection has been broken quite a bit in a lot of the Western ways. There are a lot of traditions and cultures. It's part of their everyday life, and like, it's very yeah, really powerful to just know that we come from generations. There are people, there are family that we may have loved and lost, and there are people that were related to us like before our own family's memory. And I just think of all of that, and all these people that had their lives and their stories and their challenges, but because of all of them, we're here now. And so the ceremonial cacao, it has like a long history, which I'd sort of think I'd mentioned about the sort of Mesoamerican times. There was a time where the it was really seen as a treasured source, and it really is a treasured source with how long it takes to actually produce the cacao pods. It's like, it's a good amount of time. I have read that like with the Crayola bean, it can take up to 10 years for the pod to be ready. And I think
Wow.
it's something to be really honoured. But there was a time where like the beans themselves were used as a source of monetary exchange. They were the kind of currency was the cacao beans, and so it's kind of, yeah, it is like really is this like this treasured source. And when it was like where only the elite and
Mhm.
the sort of, yeah, those that had like the royalty of that time, and the priests were the only ones that then were able to have access to it. And so it's kind of like, and yeah,
Really?
yeah. And then in France there was this sort of where they had these chocolate houses, and because of it having some aphrodisiac qualities, it was causing quite a stir. Um, and so, yeah, there's kind of these different revolutions that have happened with regards to like cacao. Like it's sort of the history of that. But it's been on such a journey to like for the traditional source to it being a bar of chocolate where it's kind of got sugar in it, and you know what I mean, and how.
Mm.
But it is interesting that a lot of people are chocolate lovers, like, so there is something very beautiful and powerful about that. And there is kind of like some guidelines that can kind of say that a ceremonial cacao is ceremonial grade, which is,
Yes.
but I think, like, they don't necessarily have that as a thing. There's sort of some things that are becoming more Western, like the way we run our cacao ceremonies is kind of quite a Western thing
Mhm.
in many ways. And and I know that because I sell the ceremonial cacao from the Ashaninka family, and I know that it's ethically sourced, and I know that they receive like fair money for growing it, and and producing it, and their people, and it kind of supports their communities. And I just feel like that right relationship is really important, because if we want healing from something, it's like we have to look after the source. And I think
Mm.
like chocolate in itself, there's a lot of slave labor in a lot of chocolate, that's being made when you look at the history of it. And so it's really like really nice to know that, and that there are like ways in which that can be supported and managed, because when things come into the West, we tend to have this very consumerist sort of
Yes.
way, and how do they keep up with the demand of something? And there are lots of different hybrid plants, that are, and maybe they're even being cultivated for faster growth and this, that, and the other. But the one that I source is very much what they have used for for thousands of years, and it does come
Wow.
from, yeah, and it's really beautiful. It really is a beautiful, smooth medicine. Yeah, and yeah, so I've got a deep love and appreciation, yeah, for the Ashaninka people, and yeah, where I supply it, where I get it from.
That's so lovely. And when you take and you make, is that having that mindfulness and appreciation when making the cacao, and then when either giving it to others or having it ourselves, that is that medicine. It's that pure appreciation of the journey it has been on itself. Like, wow, the challenges cacao's been on, where
Yeah,
it's been used, and almost as like money, or that's crazy.
yeah.
Um, and then bringing it to a ceremony to just have it in appreciation, well, it really brings a whole other dimension when you know about it that much.
It's really interesting because you saying that, because even though I'm saying like the running a ceremony is a ritual is a Western thing, that's not fully true. But I think it's the way cacao's blown up in the UK, and a lot of people that are teaching yoga are also offering cacao, and it's kind of taking on quite a different different thing. And I think, yeah, it's really interesting to hear where from the source of like how they use it there. You know, is can be in quite a different way. But from going back to what you've just said, is that the I notice, and I've noticed, and I notice it more and more every time, is, you know, I can have ceremonial cacao, like not the full dose, but I'll have some, you know, in the daytime, and it's lovely, and it can really support that like inspiration and motivation and that kind of feeling like that being, I call it a hug in a mug, you know, type thing.
Yes.
But it's really different to when I run a ceremony, because she gives so much more generously. And for me, that's an affirmation of really, that's kind of how it should be used. Like it just feels in alignment. It kind of goes back to that honoring of the medicine, of the spirit, you know, I mean, I call it the cacao deva. Some people call it mama cacao. You know, there's like it's like the spirit of the plant.
Hmm.
But essentially, it's connecting us to what's within us. So it's not like we're taking this external thing to make us feel high type of thing. It's really not like that. It's kind of activating your own system, you know, to sort of feel that, like whatever your system needs to feel. And I think being in a held space, it just gives people permission to really go where they need to go, and that is always my intention, you know. Sometimes I don't know where that is for that
Yeah.
person. only
Yeah.
they only they know.
Mm.
And and yeah, and it's really beautiful, and by the end of the ceremony often nobody wants to leave, you know, because you've just kind of
No.
created this container, and it's full of a lot of love and just that level of connection. I think it helps to, because that's another thing an undermind does, is it helps to liberate the mind, you know. So it's kind of helping the, I guess, those parts that sometimes can give us a bit of a hard time. It can just help to relax that and just be with where, you know, where we're at. Yeah.
Thank you. That's lovely. And is there a kind of ritual that would come with that? Is it the same? Would it be the same, or would it be different depending on the space that's being held?
I think it depends on a few things, like in the sense of, yeah, what is this, you know, the reason for
Intention.
coming together. Yeah, it's the intention. And yeah, so and it's also the person that comes to hold that space, because they can only take people as far as they've gone within themselves, you know. In some ways there's that. So I feel like there's a lot of elements to it, and in some ways, you know, I
Mm.
have had some people where they're not able to take the cacao, like if they've got like quite a serious heart condition, or they're on really strong not antibiotics, sorry, antidepressants. And the reason for that is because cacao can work in quite a similar way. And it's like, so they've either had the tiniest amount, or they've literally just smelt the cacao. But they've just been in the space, and to be in that space, they're in the energy of it, and they get like just as a powerful experience as somebody who's actually drinking it. So, you know, it's also a way to be inclusive, you know.
Eh, Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about cacao?
Oh, there's loads I could share about it. I think it's okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, God, there's so much.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was like, you know, chatting with my friend who also runs cacao stuff, and they've been out there recently, and something that I'm just learning is that the Ashaninka people, that they have this history of genocide, and like apparently there's a lot of information on that in Spanish, but there isn't much like out there, and it's something I never knew. And so some of the some of the Ashaninka people, they kind of they moved away. Some have gone so deep into the heart of the jungle that they've never ever come out again. So I feel like that there's really
God,
something there, and I feel like yeah, wanting to kind of protect that forest keepers of our lands, but it's just something I actually never personally knew about until literally this week. And it's like, I've been I've been running cacao ceremonies for a long time now, and yeah, so it was just like, wow, there's a lot of, and I think it's really important to learn the history into that, and for that knowing, and also that deep appreciation that we're doing something, no matter how small that is, that can kind of help them with their livelihoods.
absolutely. Giving back, even
Mm.
in the energy of
Mm.
appreciation and gratitude goes so far because it reaches across the whole world. I really believe
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and even the cacao, also like getting the cacao from them, and you know what I mean. It kind of,
Yeah,
it gives them that, you know,
absolutely. Yeah, literally the physical, yeah, health.
yeah,
All the energy.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. You're welcome, and yeah, and if anyone's not, tried it and they're curious to try it,
Mhm.
yeah, I would say. I mean, I think I would say try a ceremony really. Like I think there's a lot of sort of cacao with a static dance, and that's great. You know what I mean? But I think if you're wanting to have like the real experience with the cacao, because I think sometimes that just gives a different experience. It's not like, it can be a great experience, but it's just different to when you're being held, when your whole being's being held in a ceremony, and you can kind of just have that. It's kind of to have that deeper relationship with the cacao. Yeah,
Yep,
that's it, really. I think for now.
that's lovely. Yeah, it's blown my mind actually. Just how when I make my cacao, I actually have it in the evenings, um, with ashwagandha and a powder that's like another powder, Savatri, or how you say it, calms down the nervous system.
Okay.
Um, and it's just that when you sit in presence with just the drink and you and that energy, and then now having that extra depth and extra layer, and also understanding where am I getting that from, and the source of that, and how I'm helping benefit where the source of that is coming from. And so that is definitely something to be mindful of, I think, in the future
Yeah,
for everything that we consume as well.
because
Um,
not all cacao is necessarily has that story, right? There's
exactly.
many different types of cacao, and many different types of cacao that will say they're ceremonial grade, but and I think yeah, it's just felt on a spirit level. I don't know, like it depends, but yeah, I think it's really really important. And I
And we
think
can
especially
buy.
when we don't have to go and make it, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm,
to go and make it, to go and grow it, to you know what
mhm.
I mean? I think it puts that level of appreciation to it. I guess it's even just like going to a
Yeah.
supermarket, isn't it, with food? And
Yeah.
we just go to the supermarket and get our apples and carrots and da 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 da, and all that, whatever else it is. And but it's just like how much has had to go into, from it being planted as a seed all the way to it
Absolutely.
landing in the supermarket. It's like there's a lot of different
The
stages to
process.
it. Um,
Absolutely. And they
yeah.
can. So if I was to come to you to get some of that cacao, how would
Mhm.
people? So would people go through the website to do that?
Yeah, so yeah, you can go through the website,
Okay.
or you can send me an email, but which would also be through the website. If you want to put my email address down below,
Uh-huh.
I can also give you that as well.
I'll
It's
do that as well.
yeah, and yeah. So and then yeah,
Lovely.
yeah, and I can send people like a little. It's just a really simple PDF of doses, and just how they can use it. And yeah, and it's not something it's not something you give to dogs, horses, or parrots because they can't digest the theobromine. And when you hear when they say chocolate's dangerous for dogs, it's for that reason. They just don't have that in them that's able to digest.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I'm just like, we've just gone on quite a rich conversation of lots of different themes, and I'm sure there's like loads more there. But yeah, I guess I just want to offer my gratitude. I want to offer my gratitude to yourself for like even just having the courage to be offering podcasts. I think it's a really beautiful thing to be offering for people, and I think that it makes it well, depending if it's of interest to people, but easy to listen to. I want to offer deep gratitude to all of my teachers, and to and specifically because we've been talking about the sweat lodges with Archie Fire Lame Deer, really offering deepest gratitude to him, the Lame Deer lineage, Joseph Rael also and his beautiful painted arrow, his lineage, and offering deep gratitude to all of my ancestors, and just all of these amazing medicines that we have. And I think one thing to just say is that's what's so powerful about the sweat lodge is it is a medicine. To be in nature in itself is a medicine. You don't necessarily have to take anything. Like, it's a very powerful medicine in itself. So it's just offering the deepest gratitude. So like Wankantanka, Tunkashila, and Wankantanka is like means the spirit. It's kind of the spirit in all things, from the tiny bud of a flower, all the way to animals and plants and trees and humans. And then
So,
Tunkashila is like kind of great spirit. And then we've got, Mother Earth. And I just want to offer deep gratitude to all the directions and all the elements and all the animals. And deep gratitude for love, and the love that we are and the love that we be, and deep gratitude to anybody that's listening to this.
yes.
And and sometimes it's that kind of saying about the greater the light, the deeper the roots. It's kind of the tree, for it to be stable, it's got roots as long as it can be tall, depending on the tree. But I sort of think that we sometimes have to go to those depths, and sometimes that isn't easy. But there are different. I feel like ceremony is one of option, and there are different ways that can be offered to just really you know, help people to find that clarity. And I just want to say that each soul has their own journey and their own learnings, and nobody can tell that person what that is. It's like we honestly all have the answers within ourselves, but it's how do we open to that, and how do we honor that, and how do we trust that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's really, really, really grateful for that. Yeah, it's beautiful. Um, is there anything that you would say to anyone out there as to how they can turn towards love themselves?
Yeah, I think it's a big question again, but I think it's to follow their joy, to know
Mm-hmm.
that that they to have that full permission to follow their joy.
Mm,
And if they don't
that's
know what
beautiful.
that is, to kind of maybe go on that journey to start exploring what that could be. When you think
Perfect.
of a child and how playful they can be, and how we can maybe stop playing as adults, and I just sort of think it's really important. And
Thank you.
obviously, yeah,
That is
yeah,
perfect. That is so perfect. And it's
mm,
following that joy and being innocent and playful and open and just sincere. Thank you. That's so
yeah,
lovely.
you're welcome.
And where could people find you, Zena?
Yeah, so I've got a website that's recently been birthed, but it's been years in the birthing process, or not birthing process. But anyway, yeah, so it's
Mhm.
www.zenawellbeing.com. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and yeah, if you're interested in any of the offerings, the sweat lodges, cacao ceremonies, mindfulness based in repatterning, I do. I also offer an Amazonian frog medicine called Kambo, and I also offer traditional Chinese acupuncture as well. So it's kind of, I see it as all energy, really. It's like energy medicine. But yeah, and yeah, if any of anything has kind of brought up any curiosities, I'm happy to answer that. Or you know,
And they can find you through that website,
that's right. Yeah.
which I'll link in the description box below. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
anyone can find it from there. Yay. Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
so
I'm just
welcome.
grateful. I'm grateful for your openness and to be here right now with me and be present and just be beautiful and kind and loving the way that you are. So thank you so much.
Oh,
And yeah, remember.
yeah. Thanks, Rachel.